Hey guys, this is Lucid, and we are going to be doing a national overview for middle-aged Marignon. Marignon is in some ways, it's I think the successor to Marverny, whereas Marverny is kind of I think I could be totally wrong about this, so probably the wrong thing to start the video off with, but the Gauls, or the tribal people of France, Marignon in many ways is kind of the French-inspired kind of Sun King kind of French forces. So anyway, that's my take on it and kind of what I've heard. If I were more industrious, I probably could read up better on it, as I'm sure somebody will in chat. Anyway, it is a fire and astral nation, and it's distinct for a few things. One is it has Recruit Anywhere Sacreds, which is very rare. There's not many nations in the game that have Recruit Anywhere Sacreds, and they're good. They're very good. 50 gold is expensive for medium to heavy cav. These are kind of medium heavy. But they're sacred. So they have the upkeep of a 25 gold unit, which is pretty low. And they're very, very good with Bless. I mean, you can really... I mean, they've got 18 protection. They've got 15 defense, which is not excellent for heavy cap, but it's pretty good. They have a kite shield, so they're basically invulnerable to archers with 18 protection. They just don't give a shit about archers. They don't have a ton of HP, but, you know, they can take a hit or two. And they have a heavy lance charge. So they're going to knock the dog crap out of somebody with that first lance charge. And then they have two weapons. They have the broadsword, which is a pretty good attack, and a hoof. So, pretty solid. I mean, they're just a solid unit. They don't have very good map movement, but this is one of the defining kind of features of Marignon. The second defining... We're going to go through all the troops. Well, they have another Recruit Anywhere Sacred, the Flagellant. These are actually a foreign recruit, too, I believe. Yeah. If you put a temple up, you can get these guys literally anywhere. And we'll talk about... Well, we can talk about them now. They're... size 2, so you can put 3 per square, 0 protection, pretty bad attack and defense. The flail is +2 attack versus shields and number of attacks too. So if you're attacking guys with shields, they're going to be effectively 11 attack, and you're going to attack twice. So they do like an attack bonus, and they're bless. But they're pretty killy with the 16 damage. It's not super killy, but I mean, you're getting 2 16 damage attacks per tile. Problem is, they get literally hit by everything. They have 6 defense and they have 0 protection. So they literally want to die. And that kind of... right here it says they tend to die quickly when exposed to missile fire. What it really should say is they tend to die quickly to everything. Now, you could come up with some kind of galaxy brain blast that will keep these guys alive, like Twist Fate and super high defense. I mean, you could do something, right? But these guys are pretty fragile, especially when you cannot buff them. We'll talk more about that later. And then we have decent troop line. We're going to go back and talk about the troops. The mages, the commanders are really distinguished for a few things, and we're going to talk about all the commanders, but they have paladins who are capable of light thugging. They're not super cheap, like 140 is pretty expensive. 80 leadership, so they're good leaders. But with a bless, what you're going to want to take is Marignon. In my opinion, you could try playing them scales, but I think... I don't know. I mean, how they stand out from other nations is the Recruit Anywhere stuff, and the fact that they have a lot of sacred. So I think you definitely want some bless. How much and how deep you choose to go into the bless is, of course, up to you. But anyway, these guys are great commanders, but they're also mini thugs when you get them all blessed up. Next up, we have the Initiate, and the Initiate is Fire 1. Oh wait, we're talking about important things. I'm not going through each commander. The Witch Hunter is the other big mage. And they're significant, not for their patrolling bonus, but because they're sacred. 185 is a little pricey, but they are your workhorse mage. They're Astral 1. You have to worry a little bit about Magic Duel with these guys, because they're kind of expensive for an Astral 1. But they're not super expensive that you can't use them against Astral Nations. But against Astral Nations with really cheap Astral mages, you got to be pretty careful. But it's not like a cap-only, Astral 1. That's kind of unusable, no. You're going to have a lot of these. and fire 2. Now, if you compare them to like early age Airmore, who I think has augurs, which are S1, F1, you need those guys basically need to be in a communion to be useful. These guys are useful without a communion. You can put one in a province and have them Phoenix Pyre and summon a fire elemental with one fire gem, and that is a very good use of a mage turn. And then they can walk forward when they wake up and cast a few incinerates or something. That's very good to bolster up PD. That's going to repel a lot of thugs that otherwise you wouldn't be able to repel with, twice the PD. So, anyway, Witch Hunters, very good solo operators, just because Fire 2 is pretty good. The Astral 1 also makes some good solo operators. They are going to be able to point buff. They're your cheapest Astral Mage, so they're going to be able to point buff a lot of your troops. Casting Luck or Ethereal or Cheat Fate, or any, just the astral buffs on your troops. So that's good. And then, of course, you can throw them into communions, at which point they are very, very strong. You put, let's just look at a communion of 4 of these guys. You put 4 of these guys in a communion, 2 as slave, 2 as master, and you're going to have the masters, one of them can do Power of the Spheres, and then they can both do Phoenix Power. One of them is going to be Fire 4, and the other is going to be Fire 5. Those are very strong. And then they've got the HP pool of all 4 mages. I mean, not the HP, the fatigue pool. Like that. That is powerful. That's powerful. So anyway, these guys are pretty solid. And you've heard... Okay, we need to address something. And that is people who are like, fire sucks. Fire's the worst magic path. You cast rain and then all your fire mages suck. It's not fair. And yeah, okay, rain's not great. If you're fighting against these guys, you want to cast rain. But okay, I mean, they're still going to be really high-powered mages in a communion. And okay, it's going to cost more fatigue, so maybe you just, buff up the slave to master ratio and you're fine. Anyway, and also fire magic gets countered by things with, anything with fire resistance. Incinerate, you have to have pretty good fire resistance to deal with Incinerate. Am I clicking the right thing? Oh, it's alteration. 18 armor negating damage, and you get this reasonably early. So this... And if you look at it, it's just 3. So all of your guys can do Phoenix Power and then Incinerate. So even if they have 10 fire resistance, you're going to be zapping the crap out of them still. And it's really high precision. So anyway, there's good fire stuff. And you only need a few good things for it to work. And you have fire elementals are the shit. Later in the game, you get Pillars of Fire in Evocation, which is even more badass. Pillar of Fire. 34 armor piercing damage. In general is going to be better. And then this damage scales as you kind of get more higher magic paths, and then you also get 6 Air of Effect fatigue damage, which is pretty huge for things that don't have fire resistance. So, and then the Flamestorm, all this stuff. So anyway, you get cool stuff. So you're really, if we look at the nation, you're super solid in Astral and Fire. And then there are even people out there that are saying, oh, Marignon's really weak, you need to buff them. Because they only have fire magic, and fire magic sucks, and they're, kind of expensive for astral mages. Well, fire magic doesn't really suck that much. You also, as a nation, get access to other things like high air, which you have pretty reliable access to. And fire magic doesn't suck, and you can do really big astral stuff, and you have Recruit Anywhere Sacreds. So let's just make this nation completely, vanilla and whitewash, and just make them like every other nation. Let's not have it where it's super specialized in fire astral with really cool strong sacreds. Let's give them diverse magic path access, and let's get rid of the strong sacreds because that would be overpowered if they had strong sacreds and diverse magic path access. Which, speaking of which, they do have better magic path access than just fire astral, because they have these guys who are going to random air and earth, so you can throw these into your communions, get earth power on your mages. Later in the game, you can do all the big earth buffs, and then air for all the big air buffs. So yeah, these guys are pretty good. And then they can also mind hunt in a pinch. So now we're going to go through all the troops. We've kind of talked, okay, what is the nation broadly? It is a fire astral nation with, like, not super cheap stuff, but pretty high quality stuff. And they can do a lot of cool things. So we talked about the Flagellant a little bit. You can design kind of funny meme blesses around this guy where, like, they're very killy, but they die. So you have a bless that kind of helps them stay alive, like Twist Fate or something. Or you can want them to die. You can do Death Explosion and Fire Resistance so they don't kill each other, and Swiftness so they sprint to the back line. You put them in a skirmish formation and they just run back there and they're just like kamikazes, and that's funny. I've seen that a few times in a game. I've never seen anybody win with it. I've never seen anybody get terribly close to winning, but it was funny. Crossbowmen, we have access to Crossbowmen. Hooray. As a Fire Nation, that's nice because you can do flaming arrows. Depending what you're fighting, that can be really good. Also, this is me after playing the Blitz. So this game, I haven't really even talked about it, guys, sorry. But the game we're going to play is a Blitz. We got a bunch of YouTubers in it, which is going to be fun. And this national overview is coming out afterwards. So it's going to have some learnings from that game in this. And so if you watch this and then you watch me play, you'll be like, Lucid, you're an idiot. Why didn't you do that thing you were talking about? It's because, like, well, okay, I might not have figured that thing out yet. This is my first time playing him. Well, I've had them as a disciple before, but yeah. We have big two-handers. They have 14 protection, which is okay, but not great. And yeah, it's a solid troop. For 10 gold to hit 21 damage, I like. We have another 10 gold troop. This guy has castle defense bonus, so good at holding up fort walls. This guy does not have that. So 10 gold, this guy... Honestly, I probably should have been making this guy... I didn't really make him hardly ever, but these guys are pretty solid. Castle defense bonus for 10 gold and a 22 damage weapon. That's pretty good, guys. 14 protection, that's not bad. And this also has a chance to be piercing, which means if you're fighting really heavy protection stuff, it's going to be better. This is a really good weapon. The problem, it's a little lower attack compared to these guys. These guys are 11, and the difference between 9 and 11 can be a pretty big deal. But these guys may get to repel, so that's all kind of going to have to factor into the calculus. But for fighting indies and stuff, I think the swordsmen are probably better. For holding up fort walls, and then fighting thugs, these guys are probably going to be better. You have a pikeman who has a pike. Basically the same base chassis, but length 5 weapon with 17 piercing damage. 17 piercing damage is pretty high. A lot of thugs and like light super combatants, they get to like that 20 protection, 22 protection threshold. And that piercing damage, if you're at 20 protection, it's going to knock you down to 16. So this puts you right in the chip damage range, which is not great, but it's not horrible. To quote a very famous scientist. Okay, next we have the man-at-arms. This is the only infantry you have with a shield. And they're expensive. They're 14 gold, and they're a bodyguard. And then bodyguards are important. There's a lot of kind of budget assassins in Middle Age. So this bodyguard can be pretty important. You can recruit them anywhere. So they're pretty good to have on bodyguard duty for mages. Even what's kind of funny is a lot of times you want to take fire resistance in your bless. And so when you're lining up for the battlefield, you have these red units here. Neither of these are sacred. Neither of them have fire resistance, but they look like it because they're red. And then the units that are going to have fire resistance are probably your white guys, which is kind of odd. Anyway, so these guys are okay. I wouldn't really recommend them for indie expansion. Almost all your units are right around 20 resources. And these guys are more recruitment points, 18. But I think all of these guys are, right around 9 recruitment points. And these dudes here, 5 recruitment points, 4 resources. Super cheap. You can spam the crap out of Flagellants. Next up, we have the Royal Guard, which is basically... if you go full scales, which you can do, you want to try... These are definitely worth considering for scales expansion, because they're 10 gold cheaper than your other knights. They cost more resources, so you're going to be kind of resource constrained, but if you're using these in combat, like where they're not going to have a super long life expectancy, you definitely want to get these guys if you don't have a bless. But if you're gonna have them for more than 12 turns, these guys are going to be cheaper in the long run. So, because what's their upkeep per year? 20 versus these guys, which are 32. Yeah, so the price difference between these guys will be made up in a year. So if you're planning on using these guys where there's a pretty good chance they die in the next year, probably better to get these if you don't have a bless. Anyway, but they're also bodyguards, so and they're more killy. So if one of these guys shows up to bodyguard in an assassination, there's a very good chance they're going to pop whatever it is they're messing with you with a lance. So anyway, those are all the units. For the troops, we've got a scout. We have a recruit anywhere assassin, and it's pretty basic. Poison dagger, a strong poison, and a short sword. Pretty basic. You don't have, I don't think. I haven't really thought about how to use assassins as this nation. We made a few in the game, but I didn't make a ton. Fire, I don't think, has many of the great assassin items. A lot of the good assassin items are like death or nature, or water. Anyway, that's not really our thing. So I haven't really figured out the right way to use these guys. There probably is a way. Like maybe there's some bow that you use and you typically snipe the commander turn 1. If you random into, indie nature mages, you can always do handful of acorns. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's ways to use them. Anyway, you have them. And just having a threat vector like that is always nice. You have the Troubadour, who is a spy, so he can see mundane score graphs if you put them in an enemy capital. They can also see enemy sites. I didn't really make any of these this game. I probably should have. Yeah, they're very stealthy, and they can also seduce, which means they can also kind of act as assassins. Because they are male, they only, I think, can run away with a female. They can still have, I believe, assassination battles with men. So they won't seduce a man, but they will have an assassination battle. That's my understanding. I mean, we could test it, but anyway. I mean, we can test it. Yeah, so male versus male, there's a battle. And you can't seduce, I don't think. So anyway. Do we kill him? How the hell does he kill a commander? Does he hit him with his... Oh, he's got a broadsword. Damn. You see, like, when he's striking, he's playing his lute instead of, like, swinging a sword. That's funny. So you have the Troubadour. I probably should have used these. Really useful to have a spy. Very useful. And, yeah, okay. Next up, we have the Friar. These are foreign recruit, too, so you can get these anywhere. So one strat to consider is doing a temple anywhere and then spamming out Flagellants and Friars. And you have the... I mean, the Friars, they can do stealthy preaching, which is pretty cool. They can also lead units. I don't think... Yeah, these guys aren't stealthy. I have no idea who they would lead who is stealthy. We have... I'm not going to spoil it, but we lead some stealthy troops with flyers in this. Paladin. We've talked about these guys. Light thugging. You wouldn't think it, but they can. You are going to take advantage of all the astral point buffing you can get. The Initiate, if you go magic 3, these guys are decent researchers. If you don't, you just want to ignore them. In a pinch, they can do lesser fire elementals. Like with 2 fire gems, you can get 2 lesser fire elementals. In a bigger pinch, you can do summon firepower with a fire gem, and then you can do either more lesser fire elementals or you can do big fire elementals, but it's going to be very gem expensive to do that. You have the Inquisitor, who is notable for being an Inquisitor, which means when you're preaching down enemy dominion, it's as if he were a Holy 4 and getting rid of enemy candles. When it comes to putting your own dominion up in a province, he's only holy 2. But he's old, so anyway. You can, I think, consider taking an unaging bless on Marignon, because a lot of your troops with being fire mages and all are pushing it for their age. So that is something to consider, especially if you think it's like a game that's going to go super long, maybe worth it. And if it's a big game where you're worried somebody, Death Nations might jam together and try to cast Burden of Time, you could do it. But yeah, anyway, you've got these guys. So next up we have the Witch Hunters, which we've talked about. They're just, I like them a lot. I picked them in the All-Stars draft a couple times. They're really good. They're really good. So if you watched my Ulm series, you probably heard me, which I never finished that series. I got, I think, salty of fighting Relay too long and never finished uploading it. But that one we ended up kind of calling a draw. Anyway, or not, well, we had GC vote on a winner. I never even published that video. I really should do it. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh my god, my mind is completely blanked. Anyway, these guys are solid. Next up, we've got the Architect. This is important. So cap-only mage. These are one of the units I did not take advantage of. One of the problems you have if you do Bless Marignon is you're going to be making these Knights of the Chalice, and they take a shit ton of resources. So even if you go Productivity 3, you're barely going to be able to make any per fort. And any fort you have set up to make these guys, you're not going to want to make other things. And guess what? These guys are very bad at sieging forts. Very bad. So you need a solution to siege forts. One solution is the Architect, just because they have a siege bonus of 15. You can only make them in your capital, but you can make 3 per turn. And while it seems very wasteful because it's a lab and temple and all this, and you're not making a mage, I think by the time you get ready to roll out armies, you need some Architects in your armies, depending on what you're fighting and whether they can survive a battle, this, that, and the other. But that's one thing I have not figured out. I'm just going to do a full confession here. For mid-game battle timings, I do not know what to use as siege chaff. You can obviously recruit more human troops, especially if you went productivity, and do lower amount of the knights, and that's going to help. Flagellants are also okay. They're pretty cheap. If you have a decent bless, they may be okay. So maybe switching up your flagellant to knight ratio is going to improve your siege abilities. It was something I didn't... It's going to be a problem for this game. That's a bit of a spoiler, but... not being able to siege down enemy forts is an okay problem to have. Importantly, they're also masons. So you can normally upgrade your forts, palisade, fort, castle, citadel, right? The citadel, that last step, you need an architect for. So you have to get one of these boys to do it for you. But it's nice because you get an extra commander point. And then if you're trying to produce knights, that might get you over the threshold to get that one more knight per turn for either resources or recruitment points. So anyway, pretty cool. Definitely, I think, underutilized in the game ahead. So I think if you're playing Marignon, consider using these guys more. And then next up, we have the High Inquisitor, who is slow to recruit, 4 commander points, and Holy 3, so he can do Divine Blessing. Also an Inquisitor, which means he acts like a Holy 6, getting rid of enemy dominion, which means he's very good at it. He's also old, so very old, actually. So worth looking into whatchamacallit, on aging again. Oh, I remember now what I was going to say about the Ulm game. If you watch the Ulm game, you heard me bitch about fire, like fire sucks. I'm not actually in the fire sucks camp. I'm in the low fire sucks. Like if you're only fire 2 and the only thing you can do is fire elementals, like that gets old, and like people can just kind of counter it. And it takes gems. You want more useful things to do. But these guys are not low fire. These guys are high fire. And high fire, like being able to get up to like fire 5 is very different, and having a lot of these guys, than having like a couple guys who are fire 1 or fire 2. Which is kind of the Ulm situation. Anyway. I think Ulm is fire 1 mostly, and then they have to do like Phoenix Power with a gem to get up to fire 2. It's kind of sad. But this is not an Ulm national overview. This is a Marignon national overview. And finally, we have our cap-only mage who we've talked about before. But yeah, basically is the fact that he has higher fire and astral. You don't really, the astral you care about some because you have a chance to get astral 3, which is pretty nice for path boosting. The earth random is really important for crystal gear access too. But mostly, so you have a few things these guys are useful for. One is the higher astral. The second is the earth astral cross path for forging, because a lot of the good stuff is like this is a way to guarantee getting nature into your communions, because you're going to have some indie nature mages, and then you can do like a master matrix. So anyway, you're going to have basically guaranteed access to high nature just because you have these guys. Not early, but by the mid game. So anyway, they're important for that. They're going to be important for site searching, because they're going to site search better than any of your other dudes. And they're going to break you into some earth and air gym income. If the earth and air ones are the ones you probably want to prioritize most in terms of site searching. But they're old. They tend to, they're going to die after a couple years probably in the game, unless you take an unaging bless. And that's okay. It's not that huge of a deal. Your nation, you don't, like, these paths aren't super important for combat. You can do everything most of these guys can do with your witch hunters. What's important is just having one or two of these guys of the right cross path in your main army, just to do some of these other path things. So you don't need a ton of them. Air, we're going to talk about our summons next. And so our air issues are basically going to be fixed with summons. So Conjuration 6, you get Harbingers, which is really important. These guys are super special. They have invulnerability 20, which is very high. And then in conjunction with air magic, where you're going to be getting mist form, they're going to be mostly immune to mundane weapons. So non-magic weapons. And then with all 5, that's going to just add to that. So especially if you throw in any kind of region gear, these guys are now in heavy, they're solid, heavy thugs against normal magic weapons. I mean, normal weapons, non-magic weapons. Importantly, they are also, we talked about the crystal gear. You can potentially make crystal shields. You can do crystal matrices, throw these guys into a communion, or, master matrix, whatever you call it. And then you're going to be doing high air magic. So even with the crystal shield, you can do fog warriors. These guys can all do mass flight. So you can have flying cavalry. They're really good. They're reasonably priced too. What are they? They're 25 pearls. This is super reasonably priced for something that could be a thug or an excellent combat mage. You're fighting a bunch of archers. You can do Aerofend. You can do Storm. These guys are so important for the nation. Air is one of those things. It's just so good to have high air on a nation, and it really balances them out. But what you do need to think about is you have to be Astral 4 to cast. And if you get the Astral random on your dude, your cap-only mages, that only gets you to Astral 3. So either you need to be Construction 6, so you can do the Starshine Skull Cap, or you need to be able to make the Crystal Coin. And the Crystal Coin is a little tricky to make because you need to be Astral 2, Earth 2. And this nation only gets Astral 2, Earth 1. So you're going to need to have access to Earth Boots, which is Construction 4, to get access to the Harbinger. So, and you're going to need Earth 2 on a Pretender or something. Or Empower, for 25 Earth Gems. So, getting to Harbinger with pure scales, without any Pretender intervention, is a little tricky. It's a little tricky. The other alternative is to just empower your Astral 3 to Astral 4. And there's a very small chance you can get an Astral 4 with a lucky random. And that's very small, not something I would count on. Next up, we have the Angelic Host. And this is 50 pearls, and you're going to get an Archangel, and I think he's going to be, and it's a remote summon, which is kind of cool. And it's basically this dude. And he comes in with a few of these guys. These angels with flambeaux, which are big, they wreck demons. So this actually, I wonder how this would do against tarts. There's a decent chance this will just murder tarts with the default script. Fly attack? The hell? Can you copy this? Oh, shit. I don't know how this is different than normal attack, but fly attack, interesting. I wish I could give that to commanders. So yeah, these guys are solid. They've got invulnerability 15, so they're going to pop to things with magic weapons. They also have all. But they're going to be pretty okay against troops without magic weapons, and they hit really hard. And they've got pretty good stats. So pretty cool. And then this guy's probably going to do Divine Blessing, even if you do the remote summon. In my opinion, it's expensive enough. Unless I really needed to do the remote summon, I would just summon it in a friendly province where I wanted it. So anyway, that's that. Next up, we have these guys, the Angel of Fury, which if we look at it, that is Heavenly Wrath. And this you need to be Astral 3, Fire 1. So your Astral random dudes can do it. And yeah, basically you get this guy. And why is he special? Well, he's got Fear, which is kind of unique. He's got Blood Vengeance, which is pretty damn good. And then he's got Invulnerability, and he's Sacred. And he's got 49 HP. So if we compare that to the Harbinger, which is, I think, what the competition is, like this guy's 35 HP. Does not have Fear, does not have Blood Vengeance. And this guy doesn't have like magic pass. He also has a Holy Scourge built in, which is a pretty badass base weapon. So when would you get this guy over the Harbinger? This guy, in my opinion, would be more for light super combatant duties when you're fluffing it, or like super combatant within armies. Blood Vengeance is going to be pretty good versus mages. Like if I were going to fight inside, like this guy in an army context is not like, this isn't going to matter much. In an army, by the time you get these guys, there's a decent chance you're going to already have Fog Warriors up. So this guy's going to get buffed by all the army stuff coming out. You're going to have somebody else casting all the astral point buffs on him. He's going to get, the fact he's not a priest doesn't matter because he's in an army. And he's just going to go ham attacking, the back or something. 19 MR. This guy's 19 MR. So it's a little odd. I would expect him to be priced less than the Harbinger. Because, he's not a mage. Blood Vengeance is really good, though. So I don't know. I would say the Harbinger is way more general purpose. But this guy, you can definitely imagine scenarios where he's going to be better. So anyway, but mostly in my opinion, it's going to be like very niche, kind of specialized, you need this guy types of scenarios. What is this guy's defense skill? Okay, 12 attack, 11 defense. This guy's 14 attack, 12 defense. So yeah, definitely better stats. And then strength is 17. This guy's strength 14. Yeah, so higher strength too. Size 4. 50% more HP, just about. Or not really 50, but, it's 40 or something. Okay. Anyway, kind of cool. And then finally we get to the last spell. These guys get Heavenly Choir. So this is pretty cool. It's 150 pearls, 144. You're going to get 9 Angels of the Heavenly Choir, and then you're going to get 3 Harbingers. The Harbingers you get, though, unfortunately, are not commanders. They're going to be in unit form. So if you want to, and you have the nature gems, you can do Gift of Reason. I don't know if I can find it. Gift of Reason, which is 20. And it's going to turn them into a commander, which I think is definitely, or not definitely, it depends how expensive your nature gems are, abundant, scarce your nature gems are. If they're abundant, this is definitely a good use of nature gems. For pearls, Divine Name is 25. Not really worth it because you can get these guys for 25, right? The exception, though, is, of course, if you have a Thaumaturgy discount site, then you definitely want to convert them. But they're pretty okay units on their own. They have a Heavenly Horn, which is kind of cool. 5 area of effect, 5 damage versus with pretty far range. So you can put these guys on fire, and they'll blast the shit out of undead. which these guys have too, once you make them a commander. But anyway, that's kind of cool. You get a bunch of these angels. I think, 9 angels. And then, of course, most importantly, you get the Serif. And the Serif is super badass. Holy 4, Fire 4, Air 4, Astral 4. What are the things we can do with the Serif? Well, if you think about it, there's not a ton you can do with them that you can't do otherwise. Because you already have Harbingers, who with some basic gear can get up to Air 4. You already have like fire just about as high as you want with your witch hunters and communions. So there's not a ton when you look at it that you really need this guy to do in terms of casting. One thing though that is important is he's your highest astral, and like this is a very high astral summon. So if you're going to be doing very late game stuff like enslaving, mass enslaving, this guy's a great chassis for that, because he's going to be able to get to that very high threshold you have to get for Master and Slave, jump in your communion, and do it better than almost anybody that you're going to have in your squad. But that's like super late game use. Now, this guy also is, I would say, let's look at his stats. He's all 7, which is good. He's invulnerable 30, so very resistant to normal weapons. He's got shock resistance 22, fire resistance 22, poison resistance 15. He's a magic being, which is a weakness. That's not a good tag. He is flying. He has a huge ass fire shield. 16 AP damage is huge. He's got Spirit Sight, unsurroundable, which means it's hard to get the harass penalty. And he has Sight Vengeance, which means he's going to make people that strike him go blind. So, can he kill entire armies? You could probably do it. He's way overpriced for that, though, guys. What I'm trying to say, like, to use him as a super combatant, he's too expensive. But this is one of the things people wish for. So, I would say it's good. It's a little niche, like, nothing about this is budget. And if you say, like, what are the types of armies that this guy can kill that a Serif can't kill? There's some things, because he can Phoenix Pyre, right? So if he dies, which, like, could happen, he's going to kind of survive. He's got a bunch of traits the Harbinger doesn't have, like Fire Shield, Invulnerability 30. I think they have, Invulnerability 20. He's got Higher Awe. He's got Unsurroundable and Side Vengeance. He can kill... By the time you get this guy, though, the types of armies you're going to be fighting, I really wouldn't feel that comfortable sending him into. Not alone. What do I think he's excellent at? If you have important stuff you want to cast, but you're worried about it getting disrupted on your communion, he's like a mega caster. You don't have to worry about assassins very much. You don't have to worry about him randomly dying in combat. There's a lot you don't have to worry about when you're using a Serif to get off some important spells in combat. And if you've got like 2 or 3 super important armies, and that one spell doesn't go off, you need it to go off. That could be the difference between winning and losing a game. So, anyway, definitely worth considering. It's definitely one of the more powerful units in the game, but it's also 144 pearls. What this does scream, though, is if somehow you can control Nexus, which is kind of a game-winning condition in and of itself. But this is a pretty fine way to spend pearls. Pretty fine way to spend pearls. Anyway, we have been through all the units. Let's do closing thoughts. Closing thoughts. You also get 2 Fire and Astral free points in your Bless. Final thoughts are, it is a strong nation, not overpowered. The things that are good you have to pay for. It's not, there's nothing that's like super free or like ridiculously spammable. Like these knights, even though they recruit anywhere, even though they are that way, they still feel hard to truly mass. But they don't feel so scarce that if they die, you feel like you can't replace them. So anyway, it's a weird thing. You get kind of a lot, but you don't get a ton. And everything's kind of expensive, but I don't know. If you do it well, you kind of feel a little rich. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I felt like I always was able to get enough stuff, and I always felt like I had strong... Well, okay, I'm getting into the game. I don't want to spoil it. But basically, you have really high-quality, narrowly focused things, but the things you're narrowly focused on, you're really good at. So, you'll see how we play them in the upcoming Blitz. I think rather than do a whole new video for it, I'm going to go ahead and show you my Pretender God that I used. And I had a few. I'm not going to go into all the theory crafting of Pretender Gods, because this is a Blitz. But we chose to go with Tactical Retreat. And I had a few other iterations of this, one using gray ones, but I ended up deciding on this guy with the slightly better scales and a slightly worse bless. I think one version I had Withering Weapons, and maybe more defense. I can't remember. No, I think I had Cold Resistance and Withering Weapons. If there were like a Cold Nation in the game, I might have kept that, but it's like I can ditch the Cold, I can ditch some of the Death, that'll buy me some Pretender points. And then this guy, with being an Alchemist, is kind of nice if I want to alchemize Earth or Fire. So we went Turmoil and Luck, so that's kind of a little mini synergy. Turmoil, this is, if you go 3 Turmoil, you start to kind of feel it in Night Recruitment. But this, you can kind of tap out Night Recruitment without worrying about it much. Productivity Sloth, we went 3 Productivity. This is pretty important for maxing out troop recruitment, especially Knights. Knights just take so many resources. And then we went Heat 3 because we're a Fire Nation. We went Growth 3 because, of course. We went Luck 3. Now, you can trash Luck. I'm a Luck believer. I like Luck. And with a Rainbow that's going to be imprisoned, Luck is also nice because by the time he wakes up, we're going to have a lot of gems here to play with that I didn't actually site search for. So that's another little bonus for imprisoned Rainbows. And our heroes are okay, but not great. So the heroes are not really a reason to go Luck. And then Drain. This is, I think, the most controversial part of this build. You're not really a nation which has easy access to boosters until you get to Construction 6. And you kind of have a lot of other things, especially if you're going to be in war, that you want to get to before Construction 6. So I think if you go Drain, you kind of want to turtle a little bit maybe and get Construction 6 sooner than you otherwise might. Especially if the game's going to go long. We're playing a Blitz, so I kind of don't... Even with this, you're still going to have we have a lot of early timings with research. We're still going to get there okay. But we're not going to be like zipping ahead and getting the big tier research until we hit Construction 6. It's basically what I'm trying to say. You could definitely play Misfortune 2 and Magic 3. Like, that is a super easy swap to do, which you can consider. And you could argue a better swap. You could definitely argue a better swap. Because it's going to take, like with this, with Drain 2, my Witch Hunters, who are my primary research mage, they're research 3. I mean, not 3, 9. But they would basically get 5 more research points if we switched it. So they would go from 9 all the way up to 14, which is a pretty big difference. But it's not completely one-to-one, because we're also going to have some... I got some pretty good luck events in the game. I'm not going to tell you what they were, because that would be too spoiler, but luck definitely came in clutch. So it's not a free trade-off, but in some min-max senses, like you probably will hit... You'll hit better research timings if you take Magic 3, and that's important. But also having, like... a ton of gems available when your dude wakes up and then getting good events all the time is also kind of nice. So anyway, this is what we chose to do. For the Blast, we went Attack, Swiftness, Defense, Fire Shock, Minor Magic Resistance, Spirit Sight, which is really important for Marignon because one of the things I didn't mention so far is we can use a little used spell, which is available at Alteration 5 called Solar Eclipse, because we're Fire Astral, and that's a Fire Astral spell. And all our guys are basically going to have +3 attack and +3 defense relative to non-Dark Vision troops, which is a lot of stuff. And then if we're fighting Dark Vision troops, then there's a good chance they're going to want to cast Darkness on us, and then we don't give a shit. And then later, we have a Pretender God who is going to be able to get us into death. We can do the Big Boy Darkness spell. And then we're going to be +6/+6, which is pretty good. And we got magic weapons, because of course. We have Recruit Anywhere Sacreds, come on. And then we have Undying 2, because that's what we needed. And then we've got poison resistance, so we can't get foul vapored by somebody trying to cheese me. And all our mages are sacred we're going to be using. So we're like, as long as we have a pure sacred army, we're like completely protected against foul vapors, to the point where we could do it, if we are so lucky as to stumble into Jade Amazons. And then when our god comes out, he can do it. So that's cool. And then Blood Surge, because we're going to be hitting with that heavy lance charge. And then after that heavy lance charge hits, you better believe we're going to get that +3 attack, +3 strength. So that's pretty nice. All in all, this makes for super killy knights. It would make for reasonably killy Flagellants. But Flagellants, there's nothing in here to protect, like to really keep Flagellants alive. They've got 6 defense. The 3 defense they're going to be getting from swiftness and defense. Not going to keep them alive. But later in the game, when we have like major buffs, we're not going to get to this point in the Blitz, but we might have switched to like getting more Flagellants. Anyway, I think there's a lot of different ways to play Marignon. There's a lot of different builds. You could go... This one is okay scales, but it's not great scales. You can definitely go harder scales. A lot of this is not needed. It's kind of nice to have. Like the Blood Surge is nice to have. But it's kind of cool because it's going to open us into like death and vampires potentially in a late game. There's a Blitz, so it's not really relevant. But also, I mean, it's a good bless. The poison resistance, nice to have. Like, do you absolutely need it? No. But if you're fighting people who can foul vapors you, it's kind of a hard counter. So, playing a human nation, you kind of do want this. Magic weapons, totally nice to have. We could cut down on astral. You could also get like higher nature, and you can get dark vision, like 50% dark vision on your troops. And then I think in Solar Eclipse it's still going to be like effectively a +2/+2, because I think the way it rounds. Anyway, so like that's not bad. And then you can just skip Astral altogether. Right, so there are definitely ways to make this more budget if you want better scales. And there's also ways to take and make, like in Fire Shock, this also is kind of important because you're a nation that can do all the fire and you can do all the fire and the air battlefield wipes. So in my opinion, you don't, like in some ways this is luxury and it's going to be coming online later, but it's going to be very, very good when it comes out. For some of the major late game things you can do. And then defense skill, very nice. Swiftness, very nice. You can honestly skip all these, but these are going to make expansion better, and they make your guys super killy. The nice thing about attack compared to strength is it's going to apply to your hoof attack. But you may still struggle a little bit with things like thugs and super combatants, because your knights aren't going to be super killy if they can't get Blood Surge to trigger. Versus very high protection units. But you're an astral nation, so you don't really have to worry about that much. So anyway, I think this is a strong nation. I would kind of like to play him again, maybe in a long form game. I'm not sure if I will. But anyway, I think that is it. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.